Hi everyone, it's great to be here. There's an enormous echo in this hall. It's amazing. It's like a concert hall. So if you like, you can come all the way here, get close to me, and maybe you can hear me better. But if not, just raise a hand and say, hey, we don't hear you, which would probably be false. So as it was mentioned, there's a new topic today, and I'm actually speaking about a very close subject to my heart, and I think it's very relevant, especially in those times of malevolent Europe and, of course, Israel. I'm Israeli. So I'll start with a very small story of mine. So I was waking up about 2 weeks ago in my house. It was very pastoral. It was very quiet. It was 6 in the morning, and I was sitting there drinking my coffee, just preparing for work. Everything was amazing. My family was still asleep. My children in bed were still asleep. I was preparing for a fantastic day. And then I keep hearing this voice turning on and on, a siren. And I keep thinking about, hey, what the hell? There wasn't anything in the near past. What's happening? And I'm thinking to myself, it's probably a training, it's a testing, because there's always tasting of sirens in Israel. It's a routine, and all of us are saying, hey, it's just a test. Also, if something is happening, we say it's just a test. So, and this sound getting stronger and stronger, and I'm realizing that it's actually a real attack. And what do? I was a soldier. I will speak about it later on, but I'm not panicking, of course. I'm taking my family and running downstairs to the safe area. So luckily, I live in a very small building, and my apartment is very close to the safe zone. And in some of the places, you have 15 seconds, so 20 seconds to get to the safe zone. This is a real image of people that have run to the safe zone in the south of Israel. And this is striking. I'm moving from my own home reality, for my safety, to something that is enormously scary. 250 rockets were shot on Israel just 2 weeks ago. And I'm not saying who's right or who's wrong. This is not a political debate. I will not touch anything or try to not touch anything politic. But just think about it. What if I'll design a game where you get to build your house and place your loved one inside, and suddenly there's a rocket alarm. Rockets start hitting, and you can hear them like I did. You can hear them blowing up over your house. What would you do? Your family, your loved ones are there, and you cannot protect them. What if you need to sacrifice? What if you need to give up on their safety or trade yours for that? So, this is me. This was actually me before I removed my beard, so sorry, I'm a little bit different now. But I've been a game designer and developer for many years now. I'm from Israel, as you probably figured from my intro speech. I've been doing lots of narrative design for several games, and currently I'm the head of BizDev and marketing for a company called Simpool, which is predicting how game economies will behave, specifically in mobile, but not just. We're dealing with a lot of machine learning and AI. So if anyone is interested in data science and how to predict anomalies in your game economy, talk to me later on after the talk, as well as concerning the previous subject that I was supposed to talk about. If anyone is interested in speaking about educational games, I'm here the entire day and tomorrow, so go ahead. And of course, yes, I've been in the industry for the last 15 years, worked with some big brands, mostly on children games, and very close to my heart is educational games, and especially social change games. So, last year, I was seeing this guy speaking on of course, there can't be a lecture without Donald Trump in it, right? I'm sorry if there's guys from the US here, but this actually pissed me off, because this guy was contradicting every research that was made in Oxford University and in other researches. And he said, and he gathered the IGDA guys and all the media and said, hey, violent games make violent people. So in his assumption, me as a Doom player, as someone that has played most of his life, from Spec Ops The Line and all the other massacre games and watch horror movies, I'm supposed to be a violent guy. And I'm like the most peaceful guy that I can know. But I just want to say that out of my head. So video games don't kill anyone. Guns kill people. And if you look on the statistics from the US, they have huge amounts of weapons. You can go into a grocery and get a weapon, and so many shootouts, even by police officers. So that's something that you need to address. But that all starts with anger. And I wanted to speak a little bit about anger and how anger is created, because if we create violent games, we also need to understand what happens in a brain, in our body, when we are playing those kind of games. So I don't know, I'm not sure if you see, but anger is happening, it's the end result, of course, but anger is happening because we are disappointed, because we got fired, because somebody doesn't understand us, because somebody is judging us, because somebody scared us or intimidated us. And in our brain, the process eventually release hormones. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, but the consequences are enormous on our behavior. So it's cortisol and adrenaline and other sophisticated names. So if we just look on elevated levels of cortisol that is released to our body and to our brain when we are angry, we could see that, for example, we get a higher level of calcium, which eventually kills brain cells, kill cells and make them fire and die very quickly. And also, there are damages to the short-term memory. I'm sure anybody here can identify when you was in an argument and suddenly you cannot remember what you wanted to say. Your judgment and decision-making process got hurt. You are not making good decision. You're just being hasty, deciding on the spot, and you're not thinking clearly. So that's some of that effects on our body. Another effect is decrease in release of serotonin. Serotonin is the hormone that makes us happy. And if we have decreased level of that hormone, it makes us get angrier and angrier more often and get into that mood often. So let's analyze what is violence. So violence is actually origin. You know we have three brains, right? We have three brains. The most ancient brain we have, it's called the lizard brain. And it's the primal brain that controls the fight or flight. It's the most survival kind of a brain. It's very fast reaction. And the origins of anger and violence, it's based in order to, me as a parent, can defend my family very quickly, can retaliate with violence and defend my child from danger or attack my enemies. But when we look on, wait, I think I skipped something. No, I didn't, right. But order, even in modern times, is maintained through police and through army organizations, which is an organized violence. We can see in the US even police officers using exaggerated force because this is their interpretation of law and order. And I want to speak a little bit about the circuits of aggression. So there are more elements in the modern time, like instant messaging, or even high-speed transportation that affects our intolerance and being more violent. We are getting shoved, it's very crowded, the person on the other side cannot really understand me. He cannot see any empathy or cannot see any emotions in the text that I write through Facebook Messenger. So that drives more pressure, more anger that builds up into violence eventually. Of course, we spoke about weapons, the availability of weapons and and the ease of buying and using them under law, it's a problem, and we need to control that. And also increasing stress. It's very crowded in the city. We are bombarded with lots of ads, even in mobile game. Huge amount of ads, and everything is analyzed. That leads also to pressure on ourselves and to more violent behavior. And there are more causes for violence. For example, if I'm neglected as a child, or if I'm exposed to bad parenting, right? If I'm exposed to a husband beating his wife, or if I'm having access to weapons, or if I live in a crime-driven area, that will probably drive me to be, in my base, a more violent person, but not just. It depends. It depends on education, it depends on your surrounding friends cycle. And as I mentioned, it's a way of communication. I'm not sure if you've seen Billions, but that's a scene where they simulate. They want to show the company that they're actually having an argument. So they stage that in order to intimidate the other side of the company. So they are pushing each other. But as I said, violence is a way of communicating to the other person, hey, you don't understand me, and everything I say cannot make that clear. That's hard, I'm trying to do something. And then you use violence, or you try to intimidate the other person. So that's another drive. Jesse Schell was, and still is, one of the best game designers for social change games. He made Peacemaker, he teach in Carnegie Mellon till that day. And he was actually speaking about using violent games to make us more prone to tolerance, to be more peaceful persons, because we see the true face of war. And if I'm looking about us as game designers, as players, as developers, we have a certain responsibility. We always, when I speak to other game designers around the world, with other developers, they want to include in the games more non-violent options, and we'll show very soon some of those games. But we have to understand that we have an impact on our players, right? And we need to understand that we don't want to dehumanize the other side. We don't want the enemies to be just Muslims or dark-colored people. We don't want to create an enemy from something that is building up and actually educating us for the wrong reasons. And should we even include in our games the ability to do war crimes? Because in a shooter, I can just spray everybody. I can shoot whoever I see and destroy whatever I want. But if that was reality, if that game is trying to simulate a true war zone, if I was just going, even as a Marine, even as an IDF Israeli soldier, and just shooting anybody, I would be arrested really quickly or put down, and I will be punished. So maybe as game designers, we need to think about it. Maybe we need to include some kind of punishment to make that more realistic. Of course, we cannot dictate to players what to do and who to shoot and how to shoot. It's not our role, but we do need to try and emphasize those aspects. So I guess most of you know this game. This is Spec Ops: The Line by Jaeger. I'm not sure if Dieter is here, but this was one of the first games that I see that actually attacked and looked into the face of war in a very interesting way. So it tells the story of a squad of American soldiers that are led by Captain Williams, and they get into a sandstorm-stricken area. I think it's the Middle East, Dubai, and they have to save those groups of refugees, of even a US squad that was lost in there. And they eventually, they see many dead American people, and they find themselves actually fighting, spoiler, fighting the US soldiers that they were sent to save. And it's actually a mirror of the brutality of war and how decisions I make in war can affect my life even ahead and change me as a person. And actually this this sentence is shown in the intro for Spec Ops: The Line, and it's startling. It shocked me when I first read it. So to kill for yourself is murder. To kill for your government is heroic, right? That's what all governments are saying. So as a soldier, I can tell you, kill for your government is not heroic. It's fearful. It's hard. And to kill for entertainment is harmless. Is it? Maybe. It depends who. Another game I'm going to speak about is 11-bits game, This War of Mine. So This War of Mine is a very unique game because it doesn't speak about heroes. I mean, those guys are heroes for me, but those are not elite squad members. They are not trained soldiers. They just, this game was based on the Sarajevo siege in 1996, if I remember. And I play a group of people that are under siege in a building which is under fire, and I need to help them survive. And each of those characters have a name, have a picture, have needs, and I need to build them. I need to build them a bed to sleep in. I need to supply medicines. I need to help them survive and work as a team. But because I'm under siege, I'm always under fire, so I cannot go outside in daylight. I can go also only outside when it's dark, and then I have to go to other places and pillage them. So I'm meeting other people, other groups of people that are trying to survive, and the currency here is human lives. When you get to another house and you see two old people, would you take their food in order to survive yourself? So that's a situation that you are meeting, even in real situation. And it took me about 5 tries to play the game because it reminded me my past as a soldier and decision that I was facing. And if that wasn't enough, of course, people can choose to suicide in the game. This is one of the players, or one of the characters. But if that wasn't hard enough, they added an expansion, which is called The Little Ones, that spoke about children in war. And then I found myself, as a father, playing this game differently, because now you have to defend your child. Is the most important element in here, not me. I would sacrifice myself, my well-being, so my child will survive. But those children are facing war situations. They are asking, why do we need to kill people? Why do we need to take their food in order to survive? So that's a hard situation. Another great game, Valiant Hearts, that was made by Ubisoft Montpellier. It's a unique studio that creates that kind of games. Speaks about the war, World War I, and it tells that from the point of view of 5 heroes. For me, they are heroes, they are simple soldiers. And it tells that through their letters, the letters that they sent home, and they never came back. Even in that picture, you could see a very interesting image. They trained on puppets. These puppets don't have any face. They don't have any name. They don't have any expression. And it's very different from a real war zone, because then you kill people. You are facing people like yourself. So this is very different. It may be the original training, but that doesn't mean anything. War is totally different. And of course, the enormous view of how many fell in that war, and innocents can get hurt as well. People that were just browsing the street. War is very damaging to even innocent people that were not related in any way. I'm going to show you a very short video about it. Is it working? I hope it works. Okay, great.
To my dearest friends, through the evil noise of artillery, tanks, and planes, I remember our adventures, your friendship, and your pain. My closest friend, Emile, in your twilight years, you came to fight, not for glory, but to mend your daughter's tears. Lucky Freddy, you were always fearless and with intent. I hope you have found peace with your letters that were never sent. Anna, my bravest of warriors across the Western Front, saving the mountain of wounded without firing a shot. And Carl, if only I could light your way home through the fields of war, through treacherous nights, to be with your family once more. Although I cannot write these words, and the time has come to part, your stories will always remain, as will your valiant hearts.
Okay, that was that movie. I'm sure everybody knows about Assassin's Creed. It's not one of the peaceful games that I know about, but it was really interesting to look into the decision-making process in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. So, especially with that scene, with Nicolaus, the Wolf of Sparta. So you can actually choose in that game. You have a whole selection mechanism, but you can actually choose whether you want to kill this guy, and it's very easy. Killing is always easy, right? It's the easiest decision, but it's one of the most remorseful one. So you can choose to kill Nicolaus, and then he's dead, and his timeline is ending. And then you have to deal with other characters that you need to kill. But if you spare Nicolaus, he ran away to search for himself, and then he opens up a new thread of quests. So that is interesting example to show whether you have to, or whether you can select non-lethal options in the game, and what are the consequences, even narrative-wise, even affected you as a person. Dishonored is another interesting game which is also very violent. And in Dishonored, you have a chaos rating, you have a chaos meter. As you can choose to solve problems or to overcome enemies by just killing them or jumping on them from above. And you actually get rewarded. It's very rewarding on the short term, killing enemies, and it's very easy. All the cool skills are supporting that, so you can overcome enemies. But you can also select to do non-lethal damage, and it takes longer, and it has like fewer skills that are very concentrated on that. But if you choose to kill most of your time in Dishonored, you would see that things are starting to change. Characters are getting more corrupted. Enemies are harder. The city is becoming more corrupted and more evil. So we can see the effect on the narrative and even the ending cinematic, right? You can see the effect on myself as a player and on the city that I'm part of, or the story that I'm part of, because I chose to be a murderer. Some characters from Gears 5, which is not called Gears of War anymore. It's one of the series that I love to play. Of course, another violent series. And one of the characters, Kate there, is always struggling. Is struggling between becoming, like, killing for the cause, for COG, protecting her loved ones, but also trying to avoid that. And she's aware of being torn between the good and evil that she does. But it's also interesting to know that Gears of War is actually focusing on ice. There's lots of ice, lots of snow, and ice, even if we look on what Freud used to say as a philosopher, ice is like the cover, it's like the top layer that underneath lays all the traumas. And you need to melt the ice in order to get to those trauma. And actually, the message in Gears of War is speaking about war traumas and PTSD. And it's like by melting more ice, by exposing more and more of the game, we deal with those war traumas that the characters are expecting. Red Dead Redemption is another really interesting example of subjective morality. So, as in any Western, if we take, for example, the Marshals in the Wild West, I had vast jurisdiction, but there was a very thin line between being a criminal, an outlaw, to being a law person. And sometimes those were the same guys. There was an outlaw that was so proficient that he became the sheriff or he became the marshal because he was hired as a Pinkerton, like a private detective back then. So there's much subjective morality in Red Dead Redemption 2 specifically because the characters create their own justice. They justify what they do. This is their own truth. What they do is what needs to be done, and they justify it along the game. And we see that. Another example I wanted to emphasize is Shadow of the Colossus, that it's a masterpiece. In Shadow of the Colossus, I have a choice to make. I want my wife, Mono, I want to revive her. But the only way I can revive her, so it seems, right, is to listen to that voice, listen to Dormin, and go slay the Colossi. Kill them. Although if you look very closely, you don't really need to kill them. If you get close to those monsters, you would see that they are harmless. And this is also speaking about stigmatizing. Those are big monsters that are roaming the land, and we see them as threats. But we can also think about, hey, whether we want to just speak to them or try to solve that or try to understand and learn more about this world. And eventually, I'm labeled as a traitor, right? I'm being pursued by my own people. And I'm sorry if I'm spoiling for you something, but it's a masterpiece. The second part of my talk, and I think I have lots of time, great, is I want to speak just a little bit about games that specifically were made for promoting peace or dealing with conflict or showing the face of conflict. So the first one is Hush. Hush is speaking about the Rwanda genocide. And it's a mobile game, it's a rhythm game, and it tells the story of a Rwandan woman that is hiding in the house from the Hutu militias. She needs to keep her baby quiet. And the only way she needs to keep her baby quiet because she doesn't want to get discovered by the militias, because that's death for both of them. And the only way she can do that is by singing a lullaby for that baby. And she needs to keep on doing that. And in the game you get several words that you need to comply with, and you need to continue that rhythm. You cannot stop because your life depends on it. And it actually reminded me situation from the Holocaust. As a Jewish person, of course, this means a lot to me, but in the Holocaust, there were awful situations where babies were actually strangled by parents because they didn't want to get discovered. So that echoed in my mind as the same situation. Another interesting game is 1979 Revolution. It speaks about the revolution in Iran, opposing the Shah. And you play a photographer which is trying to document the opposition. He tries to show the face of the revolution. And he's been taken into custody, is tortured, is interrogated, and he has to choose. It's an adventure game. He has to choose whether he will tell everything he knows, and by that discriminate his own friends and revolution members, or he will just stay quiet, and then his brother that is imprisoned will get tortured. So what would you choose? It's very hard Would you be loyal to the cause or to your family? This is a hard selection. Another project I was involved with, it's Games for Peace. It's a platform that we made about 6 years ago, and it was meant to connect children in conflict zones around the world through games. And through games to connect them and make them work together, play together, and specifically get to know each other as friends, not as enemies. So of course we started with Israeli children and Palestinian children. And we did that with different classes where they didn't know who they play with. And those are the statesmen that we started with. This was our starting point. I don't trust Jewish people, they are all liars. It's very hard to hear that as a Jewish person, and that's a 12-year-old girl. All Arabs are terrorists, another Israeli kid, 13 years old. It's very hard. So we connected them through games. We used Minecraft was one of the games, one of the platforms that we use. We cooperated with Microsoft, and we built a 9 weeks program for schools, for children to play together, to work towards solving riddles, overcoming different enemies, working together as a team in order to solve those objectives. And they play together. And the thing is that when you sign into the system, when you work with other children, you see all the things that they write to you in your own language. So you have no idea if you're playing with your friend from your side, right? I'll divide it, than with an Arabic child. So this was something that we were making for 5 years, tested in some places around the world, in Africa, in Georgia. And eventually, at the end, we would meet them physically. And they were continue to play together. They continue to get to know each other. And the best players were actually mentors for the next rounds. And we measured like changes of positive characteristics of the other. And you could see a huge success in that. And we saw another huge positive success in the willingness to interact, to walk, to play, to be friends with the other. And that research is maintained up until today. And 2 years ago, we went to the UN and we received the Innovation Prize by the United Nations. So that was another acknowledgement that what we do is important and it's respected. Another interesting project that actually is originated in Israel is speaking about connecting also children with either psychological problems but also conflict resolution problems from different parts of the world through a game where they play two different tribes and they have to know each other. But those tribes are so different that the mountain people, the forest people, they stigmatize the other side so much that they hate each other. They are looking for reason to hate each other and not cooperate. And I'll play a short video for that.
One magic stone and a long journey to the land of fire. Only the one who will learn how to overcome the differences between the tribes and will know how to use the powers of each and every one will find the magic stones and save the world. The Journey to the Land of Fire workshop is an innovative tool tailored for primary schools which strengthens skills significant for a better acceptance of the other. Designed and developed in cooperation with leading researchers from the Applied Center for Psychology of Social Change at the Interdisciplinary Center Herzliya, Israel. Empirically validated as efficient in reduction of stereotypical perceptions. So, are you ready for the journey to the land of fire?
So, dziękuję, thank you, people.
Yeah.
And I hope to see you in the party today.